Hi, how you doing? Anyway, um, thanks for looking in on my video. So today I want to give you some tips on how to reconnect with your son or daughter, particularly if they're say teenagers or young adults. Um, and these come through my experiences actually. So I was reminded really because at the moment I'm doing some work with a learning disability charity, and there's a chap that never ever talks. And I gave him a lift home the other day, and lo and behold, he never ever talks. But suddenly, once we're in a one-to-one situation with me driving, quite steadily and calmly, he just seemed to open up and talked and talked and talked. Um, and I remembered that we used to have a similar thing used to happen when I worked in youth justice. I was working with young offenders below the age of 18, and we used to go and pick them up in our car uh, and bring them in for an interview at the office, and we'd do the interview at the office and then drive them home again. Now, interestingly, they used to talk a lot more in the car than they did at the office, and it's interesting, isn't it? In that safe, warm environment of a car, that they feel safe. There's no eye contact, and so you remember when we all, when as parents, when we have a baby that couldn't stop crying, we used to use the car to put the baby in and go off for a drive, and lo and behold, the baby seemed to go off to sleep in the car. So I'm suggesting that that use a car to have a really good one-to-one session to reconnect with your child. Now, another tip is to listen actually, and to flag up that you are listening by repeating the odd words that the person's saying. And the effect is magical actually, because it's rare that people do listen, and to hear that somebody else is listening to you is incredibly powerful and often spurs people on to talk even more. So even repeating the odd word or the little phrase, um, and this technique really encourages people to speak rather than interrogating. And if you're a parent and you start interrogating and saying, why did you do that? You're not going to get anywhere. But if you say, oh, if I understand you right, you felt really upset. Or they might say, I had a terrible day. And you just say, terrible day. And they will say, yes, I had a terrible day because so and so. And you say, yes, you had a terrible day because so and so. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but to actually have somebody listening to you really is wonderful and very powerful. So demonstrate that you're listening and sum up what they're saying to you. And you can ask very gentle questions like, how did that um, make you feel? Do avoid patronising and be non critical, very important. Focus on the positives and remind the person of what they're good at and their strengths, and try and empower them really, like focusing on the positives and solutions. So when you feel like that, how do you feel you might feel better? Or what do you feel you've learnt from this situation? Um, and most important is remind them what they're good at. So that's my little tip of the day. If you want to reconnect with your offspring, go for a nice drive. You know, 20-minute drive, half an hour drive, and if necessary, don't say anything, and avoid talking about yourself, and just say, well, how are things for you at the moment, and how you doing. Uh, Listen, empathise. I understand you feel like that. And the technique that I used to use in my job often was to act dumb sometimes. I don't quite understand that. Could you explain when I did? But, I don't quite understand that. Could you explain what happened, because I'm a bit confused, Rather than steaming in and, saying, oh, you shouldn't have done that. That is very negative. Be positive and lay on the line that you actually understand how that person feels. And I think, empathizing is a huge, huge skill and quality, and it will help you reconnect. And do it in the car because it's one to one, it's quiet, nobody's eavesdropping, and it's a safe environment. And it's weird, people seem to be willing to talk more in the car. Anyway, all the very best and have a lovely time. Bye now.